The Fire Station Building Committee. We wanted to lay out the next steps and cover any reappointment of committee members. So I guess I'll turn that over to, is Mark here or Kent? Or
Mark, Kent, and Graham are all here.
okay, well, whoever wants to talk from that group.
And Chuck. And Chuck Hart.
Hart, right.
Yeah, I guess this is Mark Furlong. I'll start off. We haven't had a chance to come in and meet with you since the election results, and I'd like to thank everybody again for the support and both the selectmen as well as the voters in getting this passed. We did have one committee meeting a few weeks ago, a virtual meeting, just to give us an opportunity to talk about the results and to start to put together the next steps. But we haven't met again since then. And there's a few things that we wanted to talk about tonight, give you some updates and also get some feedback on. And I think a few that Susan had put on the agenda. One was the relocation of the polls. There is some activity on that, so that probably not necessary to talk about that tonight, but I'm sure we'll be back at your next meeting to talk about that. I know the other issue is the bond application. The dates are coming up in May for that to all be completed, and Cindy is working on that and has requested information from our committee, which has been provided. So hopefully that's all moving ahead as well. One of the things I also wanted to ask about is the committee makeup and the reappointment. Our committee appointments run out in May, and we do have one resignation we're expecting. At our last meeting, William Sullivan informed us that he will be moving out of town, so that he will no longer be able to serve on the committee. I've also put the question out to the rest of the committee as to whether people want to be reappointed, and I haven't heard anybody who's shying away at this point. So I guess it's a kind of a two-part question: is you know, what does the Board of Selectmen want to do with the makeup of the committee, if anything, in terms of changing it, and what the reappointments. And I had a practical question about the reappointments, is wondering whether our terms could be extended so that we don't have to deal with being sworn in, at least in the short term.
I would recommend that we keep the same committee, keep the same people in place, and they've been working on this from day one. I mean, they've got a lot of knowledge of what's gone into it. I did get the resignation letter from one of the individuals, and I brought it over to Susan a couple of weeks ago, so we do have that on hand. And there's been no volunteers for that position, is that correct?
Do we need more people? I guess is the question. I could understand when we're going through multiple properties and kind of working through multiple bids and everything. I mean, Mark, what's your feel? What's the committee's feeling? Do you want to reappoint someone to fill that position, or are you fine with the numbers you're at now? Or
well, I think for one thing, with that resignation, that puts us back to an odd number of 9. We had one vacancy that hadn't been filled. So I think, again, from a practical point of view, 9 is better than 10. And I think a smaller committee, especially as we get moving into the construction phase, it's probably a little bit better than a bigger committee.
Yeah, well, I'll move that we extend the term of the current fire building committee for 1 year, till May 30th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Do we need to take a roll call vote?
We do need to take a roll call vote. Susan will be holding the roll call vote for us.
Okay. Bill Coons,
Okay.
Yes.
Don Briggs,
Yes.
Rich Wilson,
Yes.
Electra Alessio,
Yes.
and Kevin is not here. So,
All right.
On
Easy one,
on
Mark.
a technical note, I do not believe we need to re-swear them in. I think we're okay since the current sitting committee members, all we're doing is extending the term of their service on the committee.
I didn't understand what you said.
she doesn't think we need to re-swear them in, we're just extending their term.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in agreement on that.
Okay, that's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And then there's just a couple other issues I wanted to bring up quickly. We have received the contract from SMP, which should be forwarded over to Susan by Kent. He's our liaison to SMP. This is the same form of contract that we saw from Bowen, so it should look very familiar. It's a standard AIA contract. Bowen contract took them through, excuse me, through the pre-construction phase, which will be from now until when the bidding starts, the bidding process starts. We probably will need a purchase order for that portion of their proposal, which we had back in last fall. And then same goes for Dennis Quintel. We had a two-part project that he'll need a purchase order for the second part of that that project. And I guess that's pretty much all we have at this point. You know, we are slowly moving ahead. So far, the situation hasn't affected us, but if it depending on what happens, it could start to slow us down.
So what's Bowen saying as far as when when they would be ready to have a pre-construction meeting? And I guess the big question here is timelines, because, you know, with getting the bond and securing the rest of the financing, and I guess that's the big question I have.
Yeah, I think the project timeline is definitely a discussion that the committee needs to have. At the meeting that we had a few weeks back, we had a little bit of a discussion with the architects about that. And we had to provide some schedule information to go into the bond application, but we really haven't settled on, you know, what that schedule will be. And one of the key questions is going to be whether or not we want to build during the winter. There are definitely higher costs involved with temporary conditions and doing that. And, you know, SMP is going to need a period of time to do the design work, to have biddable documents anyway. So there may be a situation where we could push the start of the construction off to avoid, you know, building in winter, but we're not ready to make that recommendation quite yet.
Yeah, I guess the big thing is what the trustees need to know, and the bank wants to know, is when we're gonna need that cash available, because obviously we're bonding a certain portion of it. And so we need, given the market volatility, they wanna know how that can be allocated to give us the best bang for a buck. Obviously, we're not making 18% return on our investments anymore. So what the financial managers are trying to figure out is how to best serve us for the maximum bang for our buck. So even if we can get kind of loose schedules involved, that'll at least give our financial manager a path forward for getting the money allocated the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but I understand the overall concern, and definitely that schedule is important for, not only for the financing, but just for the overall project, the management of the project. So that's definitely something we'll be working on, as soon as we can have another meeting.
Okay. But obviously, if we're still waiting on designs and things like that, it's not gonna be in the next 6 to 8 months, right? I mean, if we're getting a bond for $3 million, that'll be more than enough to get us started on this project. So at a minimum, we're looking at a year before we need the infrastructure fund money.
Could you hear that, Mark?
Not really, no.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Ellie can. I guess what I'm hearing is with design and bidding and everything like that, we'd be looking at 6 to 8 months before we're having a pre-construction meeting. Is that close to accurate?
Well, I don't think we have that nailed down quite yet, but that's why we need to have that meeting with the committee and the architects, so that we can get that all laid out and make those decisions as to when the financing has to be in place.
Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just to add to that, for the group, I did talk with the Municipal Bond Bank today, and just to see if they were still online and what was going on, and they said at the moment everything is moving ahead with all of the different people that are looking for bonding, and she said that once they get all the figures in of exactly how much money they're going to need to go to bond with, they'll put that together and then go start to look. She said the only thing that could be a problem for everybody is if the bond rate goes from, the 2.5% we were talking about to 5% or something, some ungodly number that we may want to deal with. They may put it off, till September if it clears up. So, but they didn't anticipate it, but they did say that, they're watching it and they have to wait till all the applications get in, put the money together, and then look at what the bond market has. And if it's, again, if they don't have enough people to buy the bonds, of course, that's an issue too, but she's more concerned with, what, if there's a major jump in the rates. But other than that, it is on schedule for the payment to be done July 1st.
I have a question for Chuck. If, let's say they set the bond rates in July, and let's say it's at 2%, but we don't take the money until November, does that impact the rate at all?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if we have the ability not to take the money when it's offered, like if it's available in July, do they automatically send it to the town? I can ask that question, or can we wait and, like you say, get it in November? I don't know.
Yeah, there's typically
Only because, go ahead, Mark.
Typically 2 bond sales a year, July and January. And I'm pretty sure that the proceeds are available as soon as all the legal work is done on those, whatever cycle you're on. So I don't think you have the option to defer taking the funds.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment that people are having a hard time hearing you. I don't know, I guess just keep the microphones.
I guess more people should have voted for the acoustic panels then.
Yeah. It might help if we're all zoomed in future too, so you all have your own.
Have our own microphone?
You hear Don?
Are they having trouble hearing us here or people on the
I
other
have
end?
no trouble hearing Dawn. I can hear Dawn very clearly.
I can't understand Ellie. I don't know, can you? I can't understand Ellie.
But she's coming through my screen too, so.
Yep, I can hear Chuck clearly, I can hear Mark clearly, Graham clearly, And Phil, in and out. You, Susan, are clear.
I should probably give the computer to you, Phil, when we're doing this.
Or another computer where his microphone is in front of him, computer microphone.
Yeah.
Bring a laptop for him to use.
Okay.
'Cause the rest of us are all on laptops, so the microphone is right there. But if your microphones don't pick our microphones, then it makes it a challenge.
I would concur, I can hear everybody, but Phil is not real clear.
Do I get a different microphone here? How's that?
It's better.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so if that bond is going through in July, we're gonna have $3 million to work with,
Yes,
July, August timeframe?
I couldn't hear him. The 3 million would be paid on or about, or after July 1st.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell the trustees that we have a year before we're gonna need the infrastructure fund money. Does anybody have a problem with me making that statement to them?
No, I think that's a good move.
All right, I'm gonna assume since Ellie heard me, the rest of you guys did.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because construction's not gonna take place for,
Yeah, I mean, we have the DRA issue to work out. I think we still have,
we haven't heard from our own attorney.
right. I think it's just a paperwork shuffle, or just somehow we have to decide how it's gonna be presented, but I think the thing we wanna look at more than anything is making sure we're maximizing that money at the top of the
Yeah.
market, so.
I mean, other than that, you're gonna have to handle it like a TAN. If you're taking the money, then we gotta deposit the money and make money on that money. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think there's much money to be made
Well,
right
that's
now.
true. I mean, other than that, you're right.
That's it.
If you're not gonna use the money for a year, why take it out until later?
Right. And they have financial strategies that can maximize that money if they have a timeline to know when we need to take it out, so.
Chuck, what's the percentage now that we'd be borrowing at? I missed that part.
Well, we're on 2.5%.
2.5%? Is that what you said, 2.5?
Yes.
And did they see that going up or
Yes.
down or anything?
Well, she couldn't predict. I mean, under normal circumstances, it would, if this hadn't happened, it would be less. She was talking about 2%, but depends on what the bond market is and, you know, how ambitious they are with it. So it's probably not going to go down, but she couldn't guesstimate on it yet.
Okay. Now, as far as these second phases, I know, Mark, you were saying that Bowen is all set until the pre-construction meeting. Is there more money that's gonna be needed by Dennis or SFC, or like stuff that can come from the impact fees, or is there gonna be enough money to take you guys through July or whenever that bond money is available?
Mid-April.
You need Chuck or Mark to answer that, right?
Didn't really hear the question. Susan, could you repeat it?
The question that I heard from Phil was, do we have enough funds available for you to get between now and July, to any expenses that you need now paid in the next couple of months? You had talked earlier about 2 purchase orders that you needed. Do you have the funds available on hand? Does the town have the funds?
Yeah, we'll have to confirm that. I'm pretty sure that there's sufficient funds in the impact fees to cover those 2 purchase orders that I mentioned. And the only other expenditure that should be coming up you know, before we get really into the bidding phase would be any payments that S&P would be looking for. And that's probably laid out in their contract, which I haven't seen yet, so.
Okay.
We should have, the impact fees at the last notice was around 95,000 for the fire department, which is ample to cover, which is important, Dennis's second half of his contract, which is 9,300. And it should be able to cover, the other thing that we're working on, or Richard's been working on, is the septic system for Lisa, next to the building. And Dennis has done the septic survey, and that's sitting at the state's desk waiting to be approved to be sent back down. And then once obviously that gets done, you guys will be able to go out to bid, you know, for septic system for leases. And actually, there's probably enough money in there to do that if we have to do that before July. And the only other thing is, which is another adjunct, is on the geotesting. We have, as of yesterday, gone out for updated proposals due to the fact that we are, which we didn't know before when we got the original information, we're using the ICF foundation, concrete foundation, the insulated foundation, which may or may not take a little bit more work on the geotesting side of it. And there are some companies who are better equipped to write up a geotesting for the ICF than others. So to be safe, we just wanted to go out and get the rebid for the geotesting, along with the specifics of we're using the ICF forms in the foundation. So, and even at that, based on the other proposal, there would be enough money to, you know, in the impact fees to take care of that. So I think that's everything we have there, Mark, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and look at it. We really haven't looked at it since well before the election.
Right, but I think that's, the last amounts we had was, like I say, 95,000, and there was more due to come in. Not to say that we want to spend all of it, but there is enough there to keep things moving for the smaller stuff.
Right, and there's also the balance of the capital reserve fund, which, you know, was appropriated for this project as well.
Yeah, what, 17,000?
When you put together okay, sorry. I was going to ask, when you put together your timeline for construction, do you also put together a timeline for cash flow?
I would think we would need to do that, yes.
Okay.
I would have to imagine that Bowen's gonna have a schedule of draws, you know, that there are certain milestones that they're gonna make a draw from.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, Mark, you've actually worked more of these municipal buildings, and, I mean, is that typically how it works? Isn't that set up at the pre-construction meeting, and, or are we just cutting checks to subcontractors constantly?
I've never been involved in the nitty-gritty like that, so I don't know.
I would think as the project manager, they would be the ones who kind of dole out that money, and they just come to us with preset amounts. You know, when we reach this phase, you're gonna need to give us X amount of money.
Right.
Right. That would make the most sense.
And, all right, meeting with the utility reps tomorrow, so that is kind of a closed issue. Do you guys have anything?
Nope, other than a change of time for meeting with the utility.
What time is that?
Supposed to be, Graham, what did I tell you, 11?
Yes.
11 o'clock?
Yeah, it changed from 9 to 11.
9 to 11, yeah. Consolidated Communications couldn't make it at 9, Unitil could. And so they're all gonna be there at 11 o'clock at the fire station.
All right. Do you guys have anything else for us?
No, I think that's it for now.
I have a quick question for the board. So one of the things I looked at today out there, and I discussed it with Patrick Aquilina, and we'll be discussing it with the board, was to move the utility poles to the left side of the building. And it may save a considerable amount of money versus moving everything to the right side onto Ruckerman Road. So in looking at that and speaking with Patrick, especially for consolidated, their lines will all shift to the left anyway, so it'll save them from running new cable and stuff. So if it will fit in there on the property line, it may be a cost savings to the town. So that's one issue we're gonna look at, unless the board has an issue with that.
Save where you can.
Good.
All right. So we're gonna move on to the next one unless you guys have anything else.
No, I think we're good, thank you.
All right, and, yeah, you have your liaisons, but if you do need answers to questions or anything like that, just, we can set up a meeting. If something comes up in your building committee meeting or need an answer on something, please don't hesitate to call.
Okay, we will, thank you.
All right, I'll give this back to you. Well, Tammy's right here, so. All right, next up, we have the tax collector. To discuss options of property taxes.
Hello, everybody. So what I've handed the people that are here is the emergency order from Governor Sununu, emergency order number 25. And if you turn to the first page that's clipped, you'll see in yellow and orange. Orange is to do with interest, and yellow is to do with deeding.
One thing we may want to be explicit, Ellie can't see this, so we'll have to read it to her.
Okay.
Is that right, Ellie?
I can't hear what's being said.
Can you hear Tammy?
No, not clearly.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Ellie can't see
Susan, but
what,
not
Okay,
Tammy.
so I'll read it to her, but what I've handed the gentleman and Susan is the governor's emergency order 25, and what relates to me is the, in orange, I've highlighted a statement that says to grant to grant blanket statements, abatements of the interest charged on all property taxes not paid after their assessment. And then I've also attached a letter from the Tax Association's attorney, Bernie Campbell, and his opinion regarding that. If you flip to the next clipped page.
I can see that, I can see it.
So, again, in orange, he's saying that it is up to the power rests on the governing body, not the tax collector, and it's up to the individual governing body to decide if it wishes to waive interest on unpaid taxes. But it has to be uniform. It can't be like one person comes and you'll give them a break, but not the other person. It has to be for the town-wide,
have to be across the board.
across the board. I just want to make sure you guys are aware
I
of that.
got it, too.
So currently, maybe you could explain to us what the
got
rates
it.
are now? What are the rates now for, or what are we charging now for late tax?
1.5%.
No, that's not correct. So, sorry, 1.5% is the discount that you get. If you don't pay interest rates, so all taxes assessed as of April 1st, 2018, the old rate was 12%, and then once it goes to liens, it's 8%. They changed that recently. As of 2019, the new rate is 8% and 14%. So it's 8% till it goes to lien, which we have sent out our lien notices.
Right.
I will be leaving May 7th,
And there's a number of properties on that?
a number of properties.
Can you lean now, though, because of this?
No, this is just the standard interest rates.
Right.
But according to the governor, you as a governing board can waive part of it. You can set your own. If you look at Bernie Campbell's letter, he says, can be waived under the authority granted by the governor as long the provisions are uniform and do not raise equal protection issues. So you can set conditions, time limits, and amount of limits, but it has to be blanket, it has to be across the board.
Nice.
It can't be one person comes to you and says,
And that-
I'm out of work.
That's, the liens you just sent out are on last year's taxes.
Correct, correct,
So they should have paid them already.
correct, absolutely.
So.
It really has nothing to do with what's
nothing to do
going
with
on
the
now.
crisis that we're in now.
That's correct.
So if somebody
That-
can't, if
that's my
somebody
opinion.
can't pay their June tax or whatever it is when that comes
That's
out,
right.
that's another issue.
Right, but again, that's,
That buying.
I agree,
Okay.
but but the same wording, it applies, that it has to be blanket, it has to be, okay, we're gonna give everyone $100 off, or we get everyone, 0.2% off, or we're gonna give them an extra month, whatever it is, it has to be across the board.
On last year's taxes and next year's taxes?
I believe on anything that you're gonna do.
Well, what we've already voted on and done for last year is before this came out. So that won't change what we've already
Right,
done.
right,
That's just to go forward in the
Okay.
future.
That's what I'm making sure.
So this is basically deciding what's gonna take place in June when the tax bills go out, how we're gonna
Yes.
proceed if people are delinquent
Yep,
moving forward.
yes, June and December.
So the other thing is we're getting, ordinarily last week I would have sent out deeding notices. Those are for the 11 people that haven't paid their 2017 taxes. And that is in yellow, that the governor says you can't take anyone's property right now.
Right.
You have to wait till after this emergency order, and then, again, in yellow, Bernie Campbell says that as soon as the emergency order is lifted, then I can send out my deeding notices and start that process.
But it doesn't prevent them from paying for it now.
Right, oh yeah, they can pay for
So
it
you
anytime.
can't even send out the notice saying that,
We're gonna deed your property. They've already been given lien notices, delinquent notices.
Okay.
Every year they get a notice. They know that they are behind. They have been noticed many times.
But you,
It's the same people every year. Yes, sir?
but you're not doing it because you'd have to research title all over again, and it'd just be a
Exactly.
waste
So
of
if
time
I
to do
sent
it
out
now.
my deeding notices today, then once the emergency order was lifted, I'd have to do it all over again. So rather than bear that expense, I'm just gonna wait till it's over, unless you guys have a problem with that, and then I'll send out the notices, because there's nothing I can do. We can't deed it. So it would be a waste of time and effort.
next, do we have to make a decision now
No.
on what to do in the future, or can we wait?
No,
and see
you
how long?
guys, right, you guys, but it's your decision, but I just want you to be aware of this and maybe talk to Sumner Kalman. He might have some input, but.
Do you have any input?
My input is, like I said, if you're gonna do it for one, you have to do it for all, so just be very careful what you do.
So I guess how I'm reading that is if we were, and this is totally theoretical, but say we're gonna knock it down to 5% for 6 months while this is sorting itself out across the board, that would be acceptable as long as it was applied evenly and equally to
Yep.
everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
But like I said, maybe the board will have to discuss that, and then I would encourage you to talk to Sumner Kalman and make sure that, give him this, make sure he,
We're gonna stick with the same due date on taxes, correct?
yeah,
Okay.
we,
June
I
and
heard
December.
there was some talk about changing that, but we don't wanna do that because we're in a bind for money, or will be.
yeah.
I think
You
even,
have to give me a warrant, and once you give me the warrant, then I'll start collecting the taxes. I'll send out the tax bills and.
Heard nothing what just happened, nothing.
Sorry.
What's that?
Yeah, she can't hear, Ellie can't hear you.
Ellie, I'll scan this and send this to you. I apologize. I should have, if I'd known you weren't going to be here, I would have sent it to you.
I'm recording this too, Ellie, I can send you the
Yeah.
recording.
That's fine, I'll check the minutes when they come in. I got most of it, it's just at the end, she gets in and out, that's all. I
Sorry.
understand that we gotta, whatever we do uniformly, I understand that, and at this time, you don't have to do a thing if you didn't choose to. That's what I've got so far.
Say?
Yeah, I think, given the technical difficulties we have, we're not gonna make a decision tonight.
And I don't think you should. You have plenty of time,
yeah.
but you guys have to sign the warrant, so.
Yep.
Before and you have to figure out how much money you're gonna need, so there's gonna be a lot of discussion, and you'll have plenty of time to talk about it. I'm not asking you to make a decision, I'm just telling you that the decision is yours, and the advice that the tax association attorney gave to the tax collectors.
Are you making any attempt to follow any of the stuff going on Facebook with the questions?
About registering cars?
Car registration,
Oh,
boat
yes,
registration,
yes.
dog registration?
I did post yesterday and tonight and said,
Okay, hang on, I'm gonna stop you
one
there.
more time.
Well, let's finish this first, and then we
Okay.
can,
No decision tonight, Ellie, is what, we're just taking information.
Right.
so, yeah. I need someone to talk to Sumner. So do you want to contact him and get his 2 cents?
About the tax issues?
Yeah. Just make sure that we're running things by him for that. So at our next meeting, we can have the information we need.
Maybe we should have Tammy call him, since she knows exactly what it is, right?
I'd be glad to if you want me to.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
And if.
I didn't know if we needed to have the separation of
Yeah, no.
positions or,
If and when you guys sit down and talk about it, I'd love to be included, because
Yeah.
if you're gonna change the tax rate, I gotta figure out how to do that on my software.
okay.
I don't know how to do it, so I have to figure out, so.
I don't think we're talking about changing the rate.
Well, that's one of the things you can do, or you could say, I mean, there's all kinds of different things. Although, no, I don't know if you can do that.
I don't.
Yeah, the rate
Our
is
whole
set.
budget's based off the rate. I don't think we can.
Yeah, I don't think it's the rate, it's just the delinquency. The ones that are delinquent is the interest rate that would
The
be charged.
interest
yeah.
rate, but the interest rate is by RSA.
Yes, the rate is set. The rate has been set.
But so the attorney says, the order gives discretion to the governing body to set conditions, time limits, and amount limits on the interest that can be waived under the authority granted by the governor.
That's interest on waive what hasn't been paid. You can't change the rate.
Right.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, so,
Not that I wouldn't like it, but.
yeah.
yeah, Tammy, if you could contact Sumner about that, that'd be great. We'll go ahead and roll that into public comment unless there's anything more on this issue that we need to discuss. You can hit her with your question there.
I asked her if she's been responding to any of the Facebook conversations about boat registration, car registration, dog registration.
And I did, yes, last night, like I said last night, I said, okay, I am the town tax collector. This is, and then again today, same thing, but I'm not gonna go back and forth with people.
No, I wouldn't
But I
either.
did, today I said, because someone's saying something about you can do it, a new car online. I said, you cannot capitalize, do it online, call me, here's my number, here's my email address. And
That's certainly up to you if you want to do that and get into the,
I don't, but once, I said, actually, on one of them, I said, for the last time, I said, I'll try this one more time, and said that whole spiel again.
yeah, I think if
You can do
we
dogs.
see a question popping up there and you happen to notice it, maybe just getting it on the website or on the cable channel as well, just addressing that issue. If it's coming up repeatedly, we can just put it out in that forum as well, so that
Yeah.
people, but do
It's-
so at your own peril.
Yeah, it's a huge learning curve. It's been enlightening for me to realize how many people don't know that you can register a renewal online. You can't, I just am amazed at how many people don't know that you can't, and we've been doing it for years. So, just educating.
You just make it
every
too
day-
nice down there, people want to come see you guys.
But it's every day, the phone just rings constantly, and this is how you do it, this is how, yeah.
Don't fool yourself.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if that begs a larger issue, is if, if we're seeing comment, like, just for everyone, be it the building inspector or the town clerk, if we're getting questions repeatedly, maybe we just have a frequently asked question on each page where,
I would
Just to
love to
deal with-
update our website, it really, and Susan and I have talked about it.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying with this circumstance specifically, we need to get in there and
Yeah,
get some fresh information on there for people to reference, so they're not going to less than reputable sources for
Exactly,
information.
because there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah. Susan and I can sit down and take a look at that. Do you have anything else for us?
You don't?
Everything working all right?
We're working hard, getting things done.
As good as it can?
Yeah.
Mail's a little slow.
Yeah. Speedy McFeely over here.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Tammy.
you very much. Have a nice evening.
All right. Any public comment?
Public comment?
Beyond that, any more public comment? All right. That trustees meeting was only about a bid opening. It wasn't actually a trustees meeting for this DRA thing.
Right, we talked about it a little, but basically they're waiting for more information, just like.
Yeah, so I'm going to relay that to Brad, that we're probably not going to need any money until February, or a year from now.
So you got that time to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Phil, you were right, when they'll put a time frame together on this, they'll say, June 1st will be this far, July 1st will be this far, and it'll stage the amount of money they need each time. That's exactly how it works.
Most of the municipal jobs I ever worked, that's how it went.
Yeah,
But
they're not gonna surprise us one day and say you owe us $7.
who's that?
Ellen, did you have something to say? So do you know what to tell Cynthia about the amount that she's putting in the application for the bond? She has until May 7th to get that in.
I mean, as it was presented to the voters, is $3 million is going to bond. And I don't think
That's correct.
that changes anything. As far as the DRA paperwork, I think we're waiting on an answer from Sumner still.
Yes.
Am I muted?
You're not muted. You want me to mute you?
No.
Ellen, are you saying something, or you want me to mute you?
I just want to tell the board, because of Tammy, that we registered our car online. They were very efficient. It was done very quickly. We couldn't have been happier with their performance.
Okay, we'll let you finish that on the next public comment session.
Jesus.
We need answers from Sumner anyways on 5.
It took me a minute to figure it out.
We need a written comment from him on that.
Did he get the written portion from, you want to read her? Whoever this?
Cindy sent Sumner everything that she got from DRA, but she just hasn't heard back from him.
Okay.
Her comment was maybe between us and, or you guys and the trustees, you could make your own decision, but if you want to hear from Sumner, we got to hear from them.
I think we need him to weigh in with a written decision. And the last I read on it, he was waiting for a written question from DRA.
I don't think he got that.
Okay. So let's,
Well,
if we need to shake their tree.
I think the voters were very clear that we bond $3 million. If we need to have Sumner and or DRA put something in the letter, let's get that off the plate and not keep revisiting it.
Yeah, I think his point on it is, Ellie, that he's worried about them being shifty about this and trying to put the onus on us to kind of do what they say. I get his
I
concern.
understand that, Phil, but I thought DRA was pretty clear that they saw the voters be pretty clear. There's no way we put the town at risk by following their marching orders, if you will. I mean, I think it was pretty clear what we're supposed to do. Unless I'm missing something here. Hello?
I'll re-engage with him and just see specifically what his concerns are and try and address that via Cindy and DRA. Does that work?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Yep. All right. New business. All right, events on the plains have all been canceled. anything new, we'll have to reapply. And
Official, we've canceled the beer fest, we've canceled everything that's scheduled for the summer.
There was the beer fest, the vintage bazaar they didn't even have their application in yet. Kingston Days has already been canceled.
Okay.
summer's officially been canceled.
Did she respond to the last letter you sent to her?
No,
Devin?
no, I sent her one saying everything's canceled. I didn't have her application anyway, but.
Yeah, and I guess one thing, you know, we've already approved the fees, but maybe we want to start looking at bonded amounts to come out of the emergency management meetings that take place for those events, so that we're getting the money up front. And I think this is an ideal opportunity for us to close that loop.
And I think maybe that's a second question you asked for someone to speak to.
As far as bonding those events.
And getting the town's money from those that don't pay.
Okay. Anybody else got anything on that? No. Okay. Request for accelerated approval of manufacturing business.
Yeah, so that was looked into by Rich, and the suggestion came back to me. They gave it to the party that was inquiring, that Sears would be a better location for them, the old Sears building. And so that information was passed along, that it could be done there without too much to do. Just a letter to the planning board was my understanding. Is that correct, Rich?
Yes, basically Granite Fields is in C3 and does not allow manufacturing, so that's immediately an issue.
Okay.
You know, and we've had situations before where we said, okay, we'll grant you a temporary, 3-month thing, and then you have trouble getting them out.
Right.
So is,
both Glens were strongly against it.
so it's recommended they look at Sears, as that was a proper location for it. Basically, it was already approved for manufacturing, and that they would create a letter when that time comes. They're looking at, the piece parts are all there, and all they do is they assemble them at this location and ship safety shields out to law enforcement, hospitals, fire, all those types of places.
Okay. All right, committee liaison reports.
Heritage Commission has a couple questions. One is, obviously they had a lot of people that their term expired, and they're asking if they need to reapply and what they need to do. Based on what we told the fire committee, I'm assuming they don't need to, that we'll just extend them on. It's the same people that are just gonna turn over in the same.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think unless the board has an issue, I'd say we do it for a year.
So you want to make a motion per each organization, or you want to just do it a blanket policy?
We'll leave it, well, we can't leave it to the discretion of the chairman because they may not have one yet.
Right. So either we do a blanket policy that we reappoint everyone automatically for 1 year, or we do it case by case.
Maybe 3 months, actually. I think 3 months would cover us where we can get through it, but we don't want to, if someone's, there could be issues with that. So I think 3 months would probably be a safer bet until the dust settles.
So, April, we're already into 2 months, so we probably ought to go 6 months. I mean, if you go from the time the term expired, or are you gonna extend it 3 months from today?
3 months from today
Okay.
would be my proposal. Someone wants to make a motion?
Make a motion that all committees that did not have an elected position filled, that its volunteer position will be extended for 3 months.
I'll second that.
Ellie, are you hearing that?
Do you hear
Yes,
that?
I did, I agree with that. I did.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Bill Coombs,
Why am I always first?
because you're right there.
Oh, yes.
Don Briggs,
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Ellie Alessio?
Yes,
Okay, and
Yes.
one other thing from the Heritage Commission is they got their grant for the, historic place for the cemetery. Now, they have to have some work done for that, which the grant pays for, so it's like no expense to the town. The question is, do they still have to get 3 bids, even though we're not spending the money?
I would think it'd be in our best interest.
Well, that's what I thought.
That's generally not only the policy, but the practice of the town to get 3 bids.
Okay, well, it's kind of a weird situation because we're not paying it, somebody else is. Okay. And I think that's it.
Don? You got anything?
Just a couple of quick things. Working on some handicap accessibility issues at the Shell station, which I'll be working with a company on that one. I would ask the board to authorize me to work through this issue on the intent to cut.
Oh, we'll get that at the end. Did you have any committee liaison stuff, though?
No.
Okay. I'll get that at the end.
Okay.
I did get an answer
Okay.
for you. So I met with the building, or the inspectors on Thursday. Seems like things are working all right. No major issues. My concern was that there was just gonna be a huge backlog that we weren't able to get to, and it doesn't seem like that's much of a problem. Robert unfortunately wasn't able to be on the call, but from what Tori was saying, seemed like everything was kind of being managed. So that was good. I think we're in a good spot on that. Probably gonna be some pain when we get back, but not a huge floodgate opening, so that was all I had.
Just one comment since you brought up the inspectors. I reached out to the plumbing inspector to help somebody out last week. Took care of them very quickly. They were very happy. I mean, he stepped up, didn't really have to do what he did. They took care of them quickly.
Excellent.
So I have a quick question. Most of the town employees, fire, police, highway, people in this office, Tammy in her office, should we not be giving the inspectors PPE?
So I think if we have it, we should, and if you want to reach out to them and offer that to them, based on the guidance we gave them, they're not really interacting with people. They're doing it, they're social distancing outside, and they're only going in buildings if it's unoccupied, there's nobody been living there or anything like that. But I do think it is smart to have that for them.
Okay.
Ellie, did you have anything under liaison reports?
No, Tammy, obviously you saw him tonight. I did speak with Rich, and he had nothing new to add, and I spoke with Virginia, and there was nothing new to add there either.
Alrighty. This is the second public comment session.
Public comment from a public member is I would like to thank the Recreation Department, Chief Briggs and the Fire Department for our Easter parade ride around the other day.
That was very nice.
It seemed to be a tremendous success. Had a lot of good comments on Facebook and other places that it was kind of an uplifting moment for a lot of kids that hadn't been out of the house in several weeks.
And parents. It was good. You could tell that.
Put together kind of last minute by Monique Sands.
All of us, yeah. We met, Graham was involved, myself. We met to plan it out, to do the best we could to make it safe and to reach as many people as we could.
Excellent. All right, correspondence. What we have is a notice to excavate for Smallpox Road. Dan Parks, he came before the planning board. This has all been approved. We have a bond in place with him.
I don't think so, yeah. We don't have the
We
bond.
had it, he wanted bond reduced, and we said no.
We don't have a bond in place, I don't believe.
Okay.
That excavation.
Oh, it expired.
It expired and he's redoing it. They told him he doesn't have to pay the fee again. people at the state, so it just needs to be approved again. It never got done last year.
Don't they have time limits and those types of things? I mean, if you pay, don't they have time limits on excavating roads?
Yeah, it expired from last year.
Well, he's building a pond on his own property.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, and he had stated and he came to this all went through the planning board, he got it engineered and everything. He had stated at that time that this could take up to 5 years. So.
I do have a note from Ellen that Mr. Parks just contacted the planning board about amending his plan.
Amending the plan, but there's still, the planning board hasn't received any bond as of yet, is that correct? Is Ellen aware of any bond that's been sent to the planning board? I don't believe there's any bond in
Ellen,
place.
do you want to answer that?
Well, Glenn's on too, Glenn Copperman.
And Glenn-
He's shaking his head no, yeah.
No bond, no bond. She says no bond.
No bond, okay, that's what I thought, no bond.
Okay. I guess the question is, he still has to have a pre-construction meeting on that, because he hasn't done anything yet.
Correct.
So this is only the thing through the state and the bond, because we've already signed this once. So I think if the bond wasn't in place, then we signed it, and we're not gonna sign it. I think the pre-construction, I think at that time, if I recall, it was gonna be the pre-construction meeting where this was, where the bond and all that stuff was laid out. And especially if he's gotta come before the planning board.
But he's gonna see the planning board first to make some amendments, is that correct? So if the amendments affect what we're gonna be signing, I don't know that we should sign.
Yeah.
Because, is that my understanding, he's going back to amend it?
Glenn says that the only thing he's done is ask for a reduction of the bond amount, and the planning board said no. And Ellen says he's asking to make the pond bigger.
I would certainly suggest we don't sign it.
Yeah, well, if he's making it bigger, then that's, because he was right on the cusp of a dewatering plan and all this other stuff, so.
Yeah, that's,
Hold it till we answer some questions.
Yeah, why don't we get some more concrete information on this before we go forward on that? The other thing, so I had asked, Ellen and I had spoken, and based on our discussions here 2 meetings ago, about establishing a reserve fund for residents in town, basically a monetary fund to assist people with rent, utilities, those kind of things that would potentially come up. And I think there, if you didn't get this, I'll just read Cindy's take on it. I have spoken with DRA and our auditor. The board may accept the donations under 31:95B, and we can expend the same without issue. As far as soliciting funds, check with Sumner. So I'll put that on my list of Sumner questions. If an outside organization solicits and collects the funds and then donates to the town, it appears to be acceptable. So if the board is okay with it, I'm gonna just clarify with Sumner to make sure what the parameters of that are, but I did get the impression that we wanted to proceed with that, setting up that fund, where
Yes.
people could donate to that. So.
one other thing, did you see the information that came from NHMA today? So they want the towns to get involved with them, I think as soon as tomorrow or the following day, that any expenses that we have due to the crisis that's ongoing now, because it's federal money that could come back to the town based upon things like we're speaking about now. And so there is, I was reading it just before I came here tonight, from NHMA, there's a questionnaire they want the towns to get involved in and look at some of the issues that we're having, so you might want to take a look at that, because there is some federal funding available.
Okay. There's also an email here from Tori to Ellen regarding farm animals. I think it's all pretty much been addressed in there, unless anybody on the board has anything to weigh in on that. Ellie, were you able to see that email?
No.
Okay. There was someone
It's
basically
on
asking.
donations, right? Is that the one you're referring to? Which email?
About pigs,
Oh, I did not see that.
I'm sorry.
Someone wanted 2 pigs, and basically the answer was they can, but they need to get a building permit for any enclosure that they're in, and that would just make, in that building permit application, it would be, ensure that they're following best management practices. And it was just sent to us just as for us to look at it, so nobody here has any issue with it. But did you already sent her the email?
To Ellie.
Yeah.
I thought I sent it. If I didn't, I'll send it along. It's for information. That the question came up, and we asked Ellen for help with it.
Okay, I did not see, I checked the town email as well yesterday morning, I did not check this morning.
It was kind of
Yesterday.
an minute thing, so I'll make sure I sent it if I didn't already.
Okay, good.
So if you have any input at that time after reading it, just let Susan know, but I think it's pretty cut and dry. And then the driveway repair is just for information only.
Yes, Monadnock has been delivering the water. We had a little delay with that, but they are back in business, back online. Everybody's fine. And that was just another thing I was trying to contact them about, because their truck leaked oil. That person couldn't get in touch with them, but they're working with them, not us.
Okay, so we'll just monitor that situation. All American still having the repeater issue?
Yeah, they're not letting anybody into the building.
Okay. And then when I spoke to Kevin yesterday, the guy from Affinity, the LED upgrades for all our streetlights, he would like to come in. He said he could zoom in. So is it okay if we put him on the agenda for next meeting?
Sure.
You good with that, Ellie?
Yep.
Okay. And all that is remaining is the approval of the minutes. And before we get to that, I just wanted to, something that was brought to my attention and didn't seem like we were doing it right, but I think it's kind of been confirmed that we weren't, is that for the non-public meetings, we need to seal the minutes at the end of that meeting. So, and it's always seemed kind of weird to me that we've had non-public minutes going out and being reviewed and voted on, whereas we should be doing that at the end of the non-public session.
My problem with that is that they're not prepared, they're not typed up for you to approve at that point. So,
They don't have to be, Susan. You could take some minutes, handwritten minutes right then and there, and then at the end, when we come out of non-public, you fold it up, put it in an envelope, and we seal it. You do not have to type them, worry about spell check, nothing.
Well, for accuracy, though.
I think they need to be checked for accuracy at the next meeting. You can seal them right then and there.
I'm concerned about accuracy, though. That's my only,
No.
you don't have to.
I guess I've been on the school board for 15 years. We have never delayed those minutes. And if you look at the RSAs, the RSA says if you don't close minutes, they have to be available to the public within 72 hours, just like your regular minutes,
Well,
which means they're no longer,
we do
they're
seal
no
them
longer in,
on the form. We are going back to public session, and there's a motion to seal. So they're sealed,
Yeah.
but they haven't been approved yet. I mean, they still come back to make sure they're accurate.
okay. I don't think we have to vote on them per se. I think you just seal the minutes.
So do we have to?
You're never gonna look at them. Have you ever opened up minutes that have been sealed? You do.
Every
This
night,
board
that's
does.
how I go to sleep. I read the non-public minutes.
So do we have, so we have to vote at the end every time to seal, is that correct, by statute?
That's correct.
But we have to vote each time to seal them and for how long we're gonna seal them, is that not correct?
In perpetuity.
I didn't hear it.
In perpetuity.
You don't have to give the reason why it's, is that what you said? You do, okay.
Well, we have to go into non-public for a reason, and therefore that reason is why you would not review the minutes in public session. You can't, I mean, it just gets too cumbersome. I would suggest that you check with municipal association. Like I said, at 15 years on the school board, never mind 5 years as a library trustee, we never reviewed any minutes anywhere. And when you figure the millions on the monies that go through the school and being the biggest employer in the town, we're gonna have issues with right to know and employee rights. That would be the place where we're gonna have problems, and that's how we handled it. It didn't go, those minutes were never exposed to public because you're going to a non-public for a reason. There's a reason, and that reason should remain like a confessional almost.
So,
You make it more cumbersome if we have to reprove. If Susan's there, she takes minutes of who was there, what, and if there was any motion, there usually isn't, because we make those motions in public. The topic of discussion, it's done. You really have 3 sentences, plus who's there.
and I like the cleanliness of that, you know, that it's the meeting, the non-public meeting is that evening, it's sealed and done that evening. But I think that's one of those things that we should all be present for to kind of, well, I think, one, we need to check with the municipal association to make sure that that is the appropriate way to do it. But also, I would feel better if everybody were here in person so that we could look at those rules and be in agreement that that's how we're going to proceed moving forward.
And I agree with you there, so we all have at it. I'm just trying to share some of the experiences I've had. But it is a private matter. We're non-public for a reason, and that's why in that non-public venue.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you.
If spelled the name wrong, for example, it's not going to make any heck of a beans in the change.
Right. I think until we can all sit down and get advice from the municipal association, or does it say something specifically there?
I've got the Guide to Open Government, Right to Know Law book here. And it's how long to seal. It's probably better to vote simply to seal. That's one thing. Next, they need to be circulated to the board members for review. And then because this will be the board's first look at the minutes, it'll be also to provide another opportunity to decide whether they really need to be sealed.
But Susan, that's for public minutes. That's not for non-public.
This is not.
We're looking at that says non-public.
I'll copy this, if we can have another discussion about it, but I can copy this for you. This is what, I went to this to check, because I thought we were doing it right, because I got the template and it spells it all out there. We can seal it every single time, and for an indefinite amount of time, but I do think you still need to review and approve them, because even if they're sealed, someone might want to get them later, and they can. Through a right.
The only way they can get them later is through a court order.
And if they do, you just want to make sure they're correct, that they reflect what was said. So I would feel more comfortable if they were approved minutes.
Okay, and I need to tell you, if the minutes for non-public are that detailed, there's something wrong. We do not need that kind of detail in
And
non-public.
I'm trying not to be as detailed in the non-public. I know sometimes we run on, but I think that's part of the other piece of it, is just to keep them.
Let's
Well, I
go
think
through a
that-
little more homework, and we'll come back collectively and decide.
Yeah, I think the thing moving forward, though, that we have been lax on is sealing the minutes and stating a time frame for that to be done. And that needs to be done starting tonight. And then I think the rest of it, if there's major changes that we need to make, we'll consult with who we need to consult with, and then we'll decide that as a group in person. Is that amenable to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That being said, I will entertain a motion on the minutes.
Motion to approve public and non-public minutes of March 30th as written.
I'll second that.
Motion and seconded. Are there any items of discussion for the minutes?
I have none.
Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Bill Coombs,
Yes.
John Briggs,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Ellie Alessio,
No. Because you got non-public in there, and that's the only reason I'm voting no. Public.
All right, we don't need to know why. All right.
There's one in every
Pass.
crowd.
We do have one non-public item, yes?
don't know.
Or actually, I can, no, I don't think we do.
No, I wasn't aware, well,
That can be dealt with
that was
differently.
no non-public that we really need to do.
All right. Dawn, your question. I've got an answer on that. Do you want that? Sure. So for an intent to cut, it's up to 20 cords.
How many? 20 cords?
20 cords or 10,000 board feet. If it's for personal use, but if it is sold, it creates a taxable event.
Sorry.
If it's sold, it creates a taxable event. Sorry, just,
This is a question about a timber.
yeah, there was an intent to cut question, and I had sent it out, I sent it to an expert for an answer, so I got that, so.
So you want me to take care of that tomorrow? Deal with it?
Yes. Okay, at this time, this concludes tonight's Selectmen's meeting. We will be not meeting next week, but we'll be meeting the following week, so look forward to tuning in. And one item up for public consumption is there is an opening on the trustees of the trust fund. If someone has some experience in financial aspects, they're encouraged to apply. And have a good night, stay safe.
Good night.
Good night, all.